Well, hello once again. This is Code Rage 2019 from Embarcadero. This week we're focusing on some Delphi VCL things. My name's Ian Barker and I'm an Embarcadero MVP for Delphi. You can find out more about me and how to get in contact with me and various things like that, and some source code at about.me/Ian Barker. Now, this week's focus is really on the VCL. Now, old programmers or older programmers or more experienced programmers who are used to using Delphi will know that the VCL is the original control library that was available, the visual control library. And nowadays, of course, a lot of us are talking about things like FireMonkey, FMX, which uses a slightly different way of rendering the controls. In fact, they're all rendered by graphics. The VCL is much closer to the metal in some ways, to use a phrase, in that it quite often uses APIs and existing Windows controls to render. That's a good thing because it's a lot faster in some cases, although FireMonkey is getting very, very fast nowadays. And the behavior is predictable. But also sometimes that can be a bit of a problem because you're relying on parts of Windows to render some of the controls, and plus over the years there's been a very rich library of VCL components that are available, and not all of them adhere to Windows standards. Some of them are slightly out of date. It just depends on your preference. Nowadays, if someone asks me to write a new application, I tend to use FireMonkey. The reason I choose FireMonkey to use for new applications is that it's cross-platform. So with that cross-platform, you're able to target things like Mac OS, and nowadays with the enterprise and upwards versions of Delphi and Rad Studio, you can also target Linux, which is a big plus. And of course, if you're using FireMonkey and you've got the right kind of code structure, you can target iOS and Android as well. But VCL is very much still around. It's not been deprecated or abandoned. In fact, this last release or most recent release of Delphi, which is Delphi Rio, and in fact 10.3.2 and imminently 10.3.3, there's a public beta out now, has got an awful lot of additional things done to the VCL. But if you've been a programmer for a long time, then you probably know the VCL. That doesn't mean to say the VCL is old-fashioned. It always moves forwards, and lots of extra things are added and features and stuff like that. There's some properties now that allow you to say to the operating system, you render this control, not the VCL paint and drawing and things like that. We've got a very short series of videos this week. Our guidelines as MVPs and video creators have been around about 5 to 10 minutes. And I've already been talking for about 3 or 4 minutes. And I thought, well, what could I show about the VCL that's useful in such a short space of time? So I thought I'd look at one of the features of Windows 10, and that is dark mode. If you've got Windows 10, you'll know that certainly the more recent versions have very much embraced the idea of having a dark mode. Dark mode just means that the screens are rendered in a dark color, and in fact even the Delphi and Rad Studio IDEs themselves support dark modes and light modes. I personally like it. I have some slight trouble with floaters, these things that you see in your eyes, and I actually find that the dark mode helps with that because the floaters are dark. It's a visual disturbance that you get, and the dark mode then kind of cancels that out. So I actually get a lot better vision from them. But I thought, well, what we would do is probably just look at a demo of how to actually detect dark mode and swap our applications to use it. When we're talking about dark mode, we're talking about these kind of things where the Explorer is all dark and not the usual white, bright lights that we're talking about. So if I run this little program here, you'll see that it's the standard Windows 10 colors, which is kind of whitey, washed out color, I suppose, would be the best description. Nothing wrong with that. And in fact, with the Windows themes that we've got available now for VCL applications, you can have all sorts of interesting combinations. But you can also, with one single click of a little radio button like that, have your app suddenly swap to dark mode. Very, very useful. Now, that's all well and good. You can swap it and choose. You can give that choice to your users. But wouldn't it be better if when your app ran the first time, it knew that your operating system was running in dark mode? Now, with Windows 10, there isn't an obvious API to do that. But if I click on this button here on our little VCL app, we can say that dark mode, Windows dark mode, is enabled. So we can actually detect that. Now, the question is, how do we detect that? Well, the answer is that with Windows 10, in the registry, there is this particular key here, and I've got this documented later on, which is current user, Microsoft Windows current version themes personalize. And under there's a value that you're looking for that says apps use light theme. And what we're looking for here is a 1 or a 0. This is a long number here, but basically it just needs you to check for it being a 1 or a 0. If it's a 0, kind of counterintuitive, but if it's a 0, then dark mode is enabled. Kind of appropriate. I mean, dark color being 0. If it's a 1 in here, then light mode is enabled. Well, great. That's perfect. But how do we then work out how to do that in our app? Well, let's just look at my little example app that I just showed you there. Here it is in the Delphi IDE. Okay. And what I've done is in the background, I have got the project options set up so that in here, I'm not sure if this is going to show my screen because I had a little trouble with my laptop. No, it works. Go down to here and it says appearance. This is a VCL app. I just said file, new VCL. And I've enabled some of these themes here under appearance. And I happen to have just chosen some that are appropriate. So I've chosen Windows 10 for the light mode, which is the standard default white mode that you saw, and you can see in the actual form designer over here. And I've chosen Carbon, which is a default style again as well from Embarcadero, for the dark mode. Great. The source code for this app itself is actually fairly straightforward. I've got a button click event, and I've got a radio button so that I can change those two styles over automatically. Now, you're going to look at this and say, well, hang on, there's a simple little call there. Well, this is a unit that I've created myself, which I've called Windows Dark Mode. I don't think there's any around at the moment called that, but time may tell. And it's got a couple of functions in there. Dark mode enabled is one. Set appropriate theme mode. Now this automatically will choose a dark mode or light mode, depending on what way your Windows is configured, whether it's running in dark mode or not. And then a specific mode. So if you want to override that, as you see, there's a common usage pattern nowadays of people saying, I want to have the default Windows mode, or ignore that, I want my app to run in light mode. I'll give an example when that's useful. Apple Maps, I have my iPhone set in dark mode. If you want your maps to come up, you don't want your maps to show in dark mode when it's daytime. Trust me, it looks weird. So I tend to override that and say, no, I don't want the system settings. I think there's a little bug that might have been fixed in iOS 13 now to do with that, but there you go. So there's another function here that allows us to override that and choose one. The real magic is in this function down here called dark mode is enabled. What it does is looks for that registry key that you saw earlier on in the registry editor, and it checks to see if the values are there with some guards on and things like that. And if it can find it, then it will actually pick the appropriate theme. You have to name which of the themes you want, okay? Otherwise, it's not going to work. And you have to enable those themes, as I showed you in the project properties. But if we just go back, and what we'll do is just, choose in the create event for the form. I'm just going to paste that in, Okay, and now when the app runs, what will happen is it's going to call that function called set appropriate theme, and it's just going to work out if dark mode is enabled by reading that registry key. If it is, then it will choose the dark mode theme, which, as I've said before, we're using Carbon at the moment. And if it's light mode or non-dark mode, then it will choose Windows 10. This can be any themes you like. They just need to be theme names. If I hit F9, it compiles. The application will run. And as you can see, because my Windows is running in dark mode, then my application runs in dark mode as well. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Now the good news is I haven't left you in the wilds. I've actually put this this source code up on the web, and if I just swap over here and run again, you can find the code for this at tinyurl.com/Delphi dark mode. If you actually want to follow me on GitHub, where a lot of my other source code is as well and things like that, then go to github.com/checkdigits, because that's what I'm known by. And if you want to read my blog, I'm going to do a blog post, which hopefully by the time we get to the chat this Thursday, I should have filled out a blog post that tells you how to do this as well, just fills in some background. Just to remind you once again, my name is Ian Barker, and you can find how to contact me on about.me/Ian Barker. Anyway, have a good week. Hope you enjoy CodeRage.